Three pillars: time, energy, and attention. What do you find yourself doing that you can just lose track of time? That's what you should be doing.
It is a lot of your parents growing up, but once you go to college, that's on you. One of the best things you can do early in college, especially the first 2 years, is explore as much as possible.
What would quitting school have meant to you?
Hey, you're tuned in to the Mike and Maddie Show, where we have casual conversations, breaking down science, so we can explore how to improve our lives. Today's episode is a special one. It's our first one, actually, all about the traditional path for students in the US and how things like entrepreneurship and the creator economy might present an alternate for some people. We also talked about why we pursued medical school and what ideas and questions you might want to think about when you're deciding on your future after school's over. So calm your mood, clear your mind, and enjoy the show. All right. First podcast. We're here.
Finally.
We're finally doing it.
After so many people have commented and asked us for a podcast.
Yeah, it's exciting to start. We actually, for those true Mike and Maddie fans back in the day, we did do an audio newsletter. This is also an opportunity for us to learn more about each other and learn more about what we're trying to do in this brand that we're trying to build. You know, there's always that saying that the older you get, you always wish you knew what you knew now back then. And there's just so much we have to say about the traditional way of the student, right?
Yeah.
The traditional student is, dare I say, about to, the whole system is getting disrupted every day. The internet is changing things so quickly. And we want everyone to be able to capitalize on this huge opportunity. What is a traditional student?
So I think growing up, the traditional path for us, from what our parents told us, was you go to school and you think about college, and then you graduate, you get a nice job with a good company, you get married, you buy a house, you have a family, you work and get taken care of by your company, and you have a 401k, and then you retire at 65. And that's like the traditional career path, right?
That's the traditional mindset.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because that's what they told us, but neither of them actually did that.
They did do it, both of them,
For a little bit.
up to a point. But I think like everyone's fork in the road starts somewhere.
Yeah.
They realized that entrepreneurship was for them, so they went for it. But after doing what we're doing here for 2 or 3 years now, I would say that entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
It's not for everyone, no.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's so interesting. I actually have never thought about that until right now, that they taught us to follow the traditional path of a student, everything that you just described there. But they eventually took a turn for entrepreneurship, both of them.
Yeah.
Our mom opened up her own business, and dad went into real estate and became his own boss too.
Yeah, he started his own business.
He started his own business too. Multiple actually.
His own chemistry lab.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that even though they took a different path, they still pushed us toward the traditional path. And then we both now have taken a turn as well.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I think Dad always told us that you can start off working for other people, but ultimately you want to be your own boss. He's always told us that, to be your own boss. And
Right.
And he always said, like, once you get your MD, you can open up your own practice, and then you can see your own patients. You don't have to rely on anyone else. So entrepreneurship was always there.
Yeah. And then he told me that when you graduate, you can go join him in the same building and work together, see patients together.
Well, that's what we're doing now, except our patients are students.
So what would you say if we could expand on the idea of the traditional path? Because the way that I like to define something is to actually define what it's not. So what would you say is like the opposite almost of what is this new path that we can take that we're seeing as an option, an opportunity for younger people to take?
I forget what book it is, but who was it? Paul something. He wrote a book called The Pathless Path. Paul Millard. The pathless path, basically, the traditional path implies that you're following a path that other people have done that is reliable and produces results. Whereas this new path that we're taking, we're kind of like exploring, and we don't actually have upperclassmen or mentors or guides per se. So we like rely on the internet to see what other people have done, and then we try to follow other people's footsteps. But there's no like college counselor, there's no career counselor to help us. There's no internships to go into. We just kind of figure it out. It's the pathless path. I think that's like the my definition of it.
I think that's sort of true, but if isn't finding internet resources kind of finding that mentorship or finding people to mentor you on the pathless path? Or what exactly do you mean by pathless path?
It's just it's not reliable. You can find tons of resources on the internet, but no one has. It's not credentialed.
Gotcha.
There's no board certifying like this person has done this many credits. Even though I think that's like a really poor way of measuring any kind of outcome is like how many hours you sit in class.
Yeah.
But like there is no board overseeing like this is what you should be doing in your next step.
So it seems like the main difference from that definition is just uncertainty. Pathless path has no certainty.
Yeah, there's no certainty and there's no reliable way to achieve anything. There's a lot more self-reliance and there's a lot less reliance on the system, I guess, on an institution.
Yeah. Seems kind of scary. Why would anyone want to take that?
Because a lot of human beings just value this feeling of freedom, feeling of autonomy. Like when you follow a traditional path and you become an employee of a company, oftentimes you have to do what they tell you to do. If you want to be protected as part of the tribe, then you gotta be compliant.
Right.
And so there is a balance between that and how much autonomy you want to have. Some people like
Stability.
some people like having stability and knowing what to do next.
How did we end up diverging from the traditional path? Let's start from the beginning. What did you want to do when you were growing up?
Well, when I was a kid, I definitely didn't think about wanting to go to med school or become a doctor.
Okay, well, how old are we talking to?
I don't know how old does it matter?
Let's say, what did you want to do when you were like high school age? I think that's a more appropriate time to ask that question because when you're a kid, like
When you're a kid, the thing that matters most is you're having fun, you're following your curiosity. So I think that matters a lot.
I agree, but also like you only know 5 different career paths when you're a kid. You know, astronaut, you know, doctor, you know, president,
Yeah.
you know, teacher. Like I didn't know anything.
Okay, well, let's start with when you're 1 years old. Let's start with when you're a 1 year old.
1 year old.
Yeah, because there's this thing that our family does.
Can't even speak.
There's this thing that actually Vietnamese people or Chinese people, I forget. But what they do is the parents will put all these objects in front of you and you will just naturally gravitate towards like whatever shiny object you find most curious for, right? So like
You don't remember that though.
you don't remember it. That's the whole point. Or when you grow up, your parents tell you about what happened. But there's like a lot of superstition about it. But basically, in a nutshell, what happened was for me when I was 1, mom and dad put all these objects in front of us. And I forget, there was like a book and a pencil and whatever. And she said that they were a pair of scissors. I think it was a pair of scissors. And to her, they said, if you picked scissors, that means you would become a surgeon. So that's what I picked. I didn't go for the book or the calculator or like the stapler or whatever else there was. So that was just like, I thought it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then if you remember like our cousin,
Which one?
Chris, the only one with a child,
Yeah.
when she turned 1, he like, we wanted to put the objects and he like refused for anyone to even try attempting like predicting her future because of all the superstition. This career superstition is huge.
Yeah.
Like it goes either way. So like I didn't know that I picked the scissors until I got into medical school. I think when mom told me, it was already after I picked my path. She wanted to keep it to herself.
Right.
She didn't want it to sway. But I just thought that was interesting
Yeah.
because I mean, you could have put like anything. You could have put stethoscope. You could have put like why a pair of scissors, you know? Like you could have just said like a cup or something. I don't know. But anyway, that's just like random. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
But my point is that curiosity and playfulness as a child is very important. So
Sure.
then when I was growing up, probably like 5 to 8 years old, I had that camcorder that mom and dad had, that really old one. I always wanted to make videos. and make movies. So I always imagined myself growing up that I was gonna somehow be involved with like Hollywood or filmmaking or something like that. Either as like a director or something like that. Because I was always pulling you guys, or mostly our sister and our cousins, because I think you were like too young then.
I was pretty. I was in a few. I started in a few of our home videos.
Yeah, you were like not able to walk, so you just sat there.
I started in a few of them. I remember. I was like Knight in one of them. I remember that one.
Well, I was always the director and cameraman.
Yeah,
I remember
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think I was cognizant enough to.
Yeah.
I was just an extra for most of the time.
So like growing up, like I thought about filmmaking a lot. So I thought that was something I was going to do. What about you? What was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up? Let's start with as a child.
Speak when I was 1 year old. I don't remember, and I don't think anyone ever told me.
Our parents never told you what you chose?
No, I think I asked my mom after. I think I asked mom after you told me about that tradition, and she couldn't remember. I don't know if she's honest, if she couldn't remember either that, or she was just too embarrassed that I went the opposite path of what I was supposed to do or something. But I don't remember her. I don't think she remembers what I picked. So I'm just gonna scratch that, I guess, that of not being guided when I was a kid like that. But when I was growing up, and we've probably talked about this many times, but I thought I was going to be a musician, or I wanted to be a musician. I remember you introduced me to music that was like not classical music. So we started playing, because we started playing piano.
Oh, you mean EDM?
No, I'm just like, this is even way before that.
Oh.
But you did introduce me to EDM too. But this is like way when we were kids, like 5, 6 years old. And at that point you were in like grade school, almost middle school and stuff. And that technology had just come out where you have CD players, Remember that blue CD player we had that you hooked headphones into it? It's like you had to hold it, like a whole CD player. You had to hold it.
I don't remember that.
There was a CD player that you gave to me when I was like 6 or 7, and it had like 5 songs on there only. And I had never listened to like anything other than classical music before, because we were classically trained, like just playing Mozart and like Twinkle Twinkle, crap like that.
Yeah.
And on that CD that you gave me was like 5 songs. There's like Good Charlotte,
Good Charlotte.
Green Day.
I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, there was like Good Charlotte, like Green Day, Reliant K.
God.
Artists. But I listened to them and I was like, dang, this is so cool. Like, this is sick. And I got like really, really into like rock, like indie rock, classic rock. Not classic rock. That's like just
indie rock. Yeah.
It's just indie rock. But this was like when I was like 6 or 7, and like and Coldplay I think was on there too. And I was just like, dude, this is so cool. And so like I would just have like all these dreams about like playing on stage as a musician or something. And that blue, I'm pretty sure if we dug around the house long enough, we would find it too, because our parents don't throw anything away.
So that was back when we burned CDs. Then
that was back when we were still burning CDs.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, I do remember. Do you remember that game like Lenny's Music? It was like a penguin or something. It was like a bunch of little cartoon animals. Basically, you spent a lot of time on that game.
I don't remember that game. I don't remember that game.
It was
Lenny's
basically
penguins.
We have to look it up after this.
I remember Lode Runner. We played a lot of Lode Runner.
No, it's not that.
I think it was awesome.
The Lenny's something. Basically, our uncle gave that game to us. It was you get to pick like Lenny would always play a keyboard, and there was like I don't know, like a walrus playing a guitar. Like there's all these different animals, and they all had like different instruments. And when you click on them, you would load them up on stage, and they would just play the same riff over and over and over.
I remember this.
And you can
game.
like mix and match, and like that was your first ever experience in music production. It was like GarageBand, but these animals would always play the same loop. And so it was like, oh, what if I put the tiger with the penguin, or what if I put the walrus with the giraffe, or whatever it was.
I don't remember.
But you played that a lot.
Dang, I gotta find this now. That's funny.
Yeah, Lenny's something.
Lenny's penguins. If we find it, we'll put it on screen too, or whatever.
In description. I'm sure the game is like dead now.
Yeah, if we find it, we'll put it in description just to know. But that was, to go back to the question, that was the first thing I remember thinking like, yeah, that would be like a cool future. But that was when I was a kid,
Yeah, but when you're a kid, your curiosity and your playfulness means a lot, because that's where like you're not thinking, you're not conscious, but your energy is just naturally drawing you towards the things that you like.
Yeah. Well, I guess actually that for me, I still wanted to do that for quite a while, up and through high school, because most of my friends at that time were still playing music.
So your friends reinforce it, you know?
They did, but did I ever tell you about this one friend I had in middle school? He was a serial bullshitter, though. He was like a chronic liar, pathological liar.
Okay.
I think like confirmed like after high school when I kept in touch with him.
Okay.
But in seventh grade, he transferred to middle school where I did. He didn't go there before. He was like at Troy, I think, or something like that. But he's like a really good guitar player. Took lessons for it. And he was like one of the few musicians at school that would like to play rock music. And we entered a talent show together because he wanted to play this Metallica song, like the one on Guitar Hero. I forget which one it was, the one that's really popular back then. And he was like, "Hey, I need a drummer. Like, do you want to play drums for me?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I want to play drums." Like, because our uncle gave us a drum set, so I had been practicing drums. And so we played a talent show. He played guitar, I played drums. We played the song. We won the talent show.
Nice.
And for months afterwards, like he fed me lies. He fed me lies that his dad was best friends with the manager of Metallica, and that he would, if we kept practicing, that he would get us to be the opener for Metallica and we get to meet them. And he just kept feeding me these lies, and I was like, my ego was through the roof. You know, I was like 12 years old. Like,
Who is this? Oh, I guess
I'm not going to reveal
any.
any names. I'll tell you later. But he's still a friend of mine right now, which is why. And I think he's doing pretty well. He's up in NorCal. I think he's married now. But it was just so funny because he was like feeding me these lies, like, yeah, like one of these days we're gonna open up for Metallica. We're gonna make it big. Like my dad can get us like record deals and all this stuff. And I was just like eating into it. I was like, oh my god, like this is the beginning of my future right here. Like I gotta like lock down this drumming and like, you know, and play bass and like and do all that stuff.
Sounds like
and
it
then,
changed your life.
Yeah, but then the next year he transferred back to a different school district. And then I found out that he just lies to everybody about everything.
Oh.
Potentially, now that I think about it, it could possibly be because he moved schools so often. Like he was one of those kids who switched schools like every year or two because his parents had to move around. His parents, I think his mother and father were divorced, and father was military, so he moved around a lot with his dad. But maybe like a coping mechanism to make friends, he would just try to fabricate stories or something. I don't know exactly. I'm kind of digging into his psyche here now, but yeah, he really kept the dream alive for me.
Yeah.
For a while.
So we just talked about what we wanted to be when we grew up as kids, but then now, like, what school and career expectations do you think were placed on you, like from outside sources, like from our parents, from society, from our family? Like, did you feel any pressure or any expectations on a certain career path?
Starting from when?
Whenever you can remember, whenever you can remember.
Definitely. Going to college was something that was always expected out of us. And up until that point, I never really had any expectations. I think our parents just encouraged us to pursue sciences because that's what they knew. And I guess that's what you were doing. And my sister did. And you guys are both older than me. But I do remember always knowing that they wanted us to do sciences, and through sciences, they wanted us to do something prestigious. I guess I can only speak for myself, but mom and dad did say, yeah, you should try to become a doctor or a dentist. I do remember that pretty clearly. That's pretty much it. They just told me those two things, really. And I, at that time when I was younger, didn't do any like self-reflection, didn't do much thinking about my future. So I was just like, yeah, they're presenting me an option. I might as well just go for it. So ended up being something that I actually fell into and actually enjoyed and really wanted to do at the time. So there was family pressure and there was external pressure because they had that influence. And you were also a doctor or in med school. So there was a lot of that pressure too. So that was where it came from for me.
Yeah, so growing up, I think I did have some school and career expectations, either from parents or society or wherever. For example, mom always told us to think about how you can give back to society, like give back to other people. So mom's thing was that she and her family, when they came to America as refugees, she felt grateful because she felt there's some sort of guardian angel looking over their family. And so so many people along the journey helped them recover their lives because they lost everything. And so her thing was always to find ways to give back to other people, because what you give to the world will give back to you, kind of thing. It's like karma.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, a lot of the career options that I considered was in healthcare or some kind of hospitality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then for dad was always thinking big. Like he wanted us to like discover some kind of cool invention or like publish stuff, you
He
know?
loved that word
He loved
invention.
inventions.
Yeah, he always wanted us to invent something.
Yeah. So his thing was always like get an education and use your intellect to change the world and make other people's lives better
Mm-hmm.
through invention.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, we naturally gravitated towards science. And obviously mom and dad they're both scientists.
Right.
Mom's a pharmacist, dad's a chemist. So that like invention plus giving back, like plus taking care of other people,
Mm-hmm.
that was to me some sort of healthcare science career
Mm-hmm.
path. That's what I always imagined it to be.
It sounds like when you were a kid, you wanted to be some kind of director, filmmaker type thing. And then as you learned more about our parents and as their influence hit you through like high school and college, you decided that healthcare was more of a route. But when you're in college, obviously when you moved away from home, and I know a lot of people do the same thing when they graduate high school, they finally have this first sense of freedom when they're out of the house. What kind of change does that have on your mental state? What changed in college? Because that's really when you form that decision about what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can reflect back on college, like what were some of the most defining moments of like, yes, this is now what I want to do?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with figuring out what do I want to do.
Yeah.
Even after college,
Yeah.
people struggle. I was barely sure by the end of college what I wanted to do too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think that's like probably one of the biggest anxiety-inducing decisions that young people have to make.
Yeah. Well, for me, when I graduated high school, because I spent so much time with my high school friends making videos.
Mm-hmm.
When we graduated, we all went separate ways and we all went to different colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my friends actually went to a film. Some of my friends actually went towards a film school path,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't. And when I went to college, I started making new friends, and all those friends were pre-meds. So that's just what
Yeah.
happened. You just naturally become the average of the 5 people you hang out with most, and all my friends were pre-med.
How did you meet? Were they just because they were in the same class as you, or did you live with them? I forget.
I lived with them. They were all in my dorm
Near your
because I
dorm.
was in the honors. I was in the honors program,
Oh.
and so in the honors program, there is a high percentage of pre-meds. It just naturally happened that way.
At our school, yeah, that's true.
And there was like no one really trying to do creative careers.
Yeah. What it sounds like is that the people you spend a lot of time with, they were a big influence on your decision to also do medicine. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean the people you spend a lot of time with, you identify with them,
Mm-hmm.
you get along with them, and so all of our interests is kind of aligned.
Mm-hmm.
It's just natural. And then I would also say that I don't know why, but I've been a pretty competitive person for a lot of my youth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if that's from being the eldest or whatever, but I remember there was a time where I thought about like what should I do in healthcare, and people started listing things like, oh, you can be a nurse, you can be a physical therapist, you can be a dentist or whatever. There's so many different things to do in healthcare, right?
Right.
And I'm just like, well, what's the most
Challenging.
It's like, what's the number one thing, the hardest to get? You know, what is the most challenging? And like, oh, doctor. Okay, then what's above that? That's what I'm going for. You know, so okay, I can do it, and then let's do it.
Wow. So you had that mindset too of like you wanted to be
Yeah,
the very
I mean, in
best.
high school, I wanted to be number one.
You were.
I went out of the way
You were number one.
to make sure that happened.
Yeah.
So there was some competitive nature in me. I'm not really sure why, but
Did you? This is something that a lot of people realize too, but did you feel like the playing field got leveled when you went to college? And how did you respond to that?
So that's an interesting question.
Because I know that's something that a lot of students struggle with is
Hmm.
they think that they feel pressure to be the number one student.
Yeah.
And oftentimes being like a gifted student early on,
Hmm.
especially in like when you're growing up in like elementary school,
Hmm.
middle school, high school, it really kind of messes with you when you get to college
Hmm.
because you realize that you're not that much smarter than most people.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are a few exceptions. You know, there's some Goodwill Hunting types out there who are actually just very, very
Hmm.
bright and just that the memory just like works. Like
Yeah.
there's something different. But for the most part,
Hmm.
people who start off early doing really well, they
Hmm.
realize something happens in college.
Yeah. So my answer is kind of weird. I planned ahead in that I didn't go to the top schools that I got into
Hmm.
because in the back of my mind, I felt like maybe I do want to try this doctor path.
Hmm.
And so I'd already been talking to people a lot older than me, asking them like, "Hey, what should I do?" And I remember a lot of them telling me like, "Your college doesn't matter that much." They even said your medical school doesn't matter that much. Once you get an MD, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
So like in the back of my mind, I said I need to get the grades, but I still want to have fun in college.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I did not go to the top ranked school that I got into.
Hmm.
So I went to like a mid-tier school thinking that I would still be able to outcompete most people
Hmm.
while still being able to enjoy like my college life.
Hmm. That's interesting. Is that what you would recommend to someone too, if they were trying to get into med school or they had some kind of dream of something prestigious academically that they should not lower their potential, I guess, in terms of Ivy Leagues or whatever, but
Mm.
like, is that a reasonable approach? Is that a smart idea, you think?
I I think a smart idea would be to figure out what your values are and
Mm-hmm.
then plan around it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think back then I was like, I don't know if there's a term for it, but I was a maximizer. Like I wanted to do everything. And I knew a lot of people told me like, oh, college is the best years of your life. You're gonna have fun, you're gonna party, you're gonna meet people.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not want to lose that because I also heard that, oh yeah, pre-meds have no life. They study 24/7. They're in the library all the time
Mm-hmm.
and they have no social life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, how am I going to make these two things work? So that's my values were I wanted to have fun in college, but I still wanted to become a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the compromise. I
Yeah.
was like, does Berkeley or UCLA or whatever Ivy League really matter that much?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, so you got to figure out your values and then you
Yeah.
plan around it.
Okay. That's smart. So sounds like the best thing you can do is to figure out your values first before making decisions.
Yeah. Because after high school, there were a number of my friends who also wanted to become doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them, they all went to like really competitive schools.
Yeah.
And so they all left the pre-med path like after a couple of years.
So it sounds like you had already had this kind of values discussion internally, at least, even when you were young in high school.
Mhm.
And I think that, at least speaking from personal experience, that was nowhere even near my radar about thinking about my future or thinking about a value first decision making model.
Just clarify your goals. I guess
Yeah.
that's Torah tendencies.
Right. But yeah, okay. So I guess my question to you is what framework could you provide? Like, is there a way to think about now that you know to help someone identify their values and so they can make better decisions? Because we all want to make better decisions about what we do in the future, and it seems like you had a pretty solid framework already, even at a young age. Like, how did you do that, and or what is that framework? If you can provide some insight,
Man, I don't know if I had an actual framework at that time.
or if we do now, I guess if
Mhm.
you have one now.
I do have one now.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get around to making a video about this because um, this is a framework that I got from reading so many different books
Mm-hmm.
about like career decisions and making tough decisions and stuff like that. I've been thinking about this a lot since doing YouTube and all these other side hustles and kind of straying from our typical doctor career path. Is that how do you find work that you enjoy
Mm-hmm.
and that you find fulfilling? And I've been doing a lot of reading on this and like how do you make big decisions related to your career.
Mm-hmm.
I asked myself, like, what is work? Like the definition, like a simple definition to me is work is just what you do to be a productive member of society.
Mm.
And so I thought, we make a lot of content about productivity. What is there a productive way to think about this? And I started mind mapping this out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, productivity, the three pillars: time, energy, and attention, right? So then I thought, oh, if you just follow time, energy, and attention, that will guide your body, that will guide your mind to just gravitate towards whatever is most naturally productive to you. And that is how you find it. So for example, for time, like what do you find yourself doing that you can just lose track of time, like in flow, just lose track of time completely, and and you're just so immersed in it. That's what you should be doing. Or thought another way, what would you do that you would not want to speed up? Like if I'm in the hospital, I'm always thinking, dude, when is it time to get out? I want to go home. I want to speed up every single day I'm in the hospital. But when I'm like
I assume
creative, I don't want to speed that up. I want to enjoy like every moment of it.
Yeah.
That's the time aspect.
I assume that you're going to need all three of these boxes checked.
All three of the boxes are a guide if you want to follow it.
Because I'm about to say, I can play Dota for 10 hours straight and I feel like, oh, let's go.
No, easily. So then you just think about the next one, energy. What gives you energy?
All right, there it is. Two boxes checked.
I would say Dota takes away my energy. You farm for 40 minutes and then you just get crushed, and then all my energy is gone.
If you win, you get that rare loot. You get that new skin.
Yeah, but if you don't, then you lose. But yeah, that's a good point
queue
too.
Up again.
That's a good point too. Like, yeah, you get a lot of energy from it.
Yeah.
Whereas like in the hospital, I was always losing energy and like losing sleep. I guess that's probably a big factor too. But then attention, the third thing is like whenever you're procrastinating or getting distracted by something from what you're supposed to be doing, instead of like beating yourself up over it, like just look at what you're doing. Like, what are you procrastinating with? Because that thing could be where your body is naturally gravitating towards too. Or like, what do you find yourself being distracted by? Like, I was getting distracted by making videos. I was procrastinating on studying for med school by making videos. And I was like, man, I'm wasting my time. But then I'm looking at it, dude, I can actually post these videos on YouTube and actually side hustle with it. So that eventually grew into something more.
Yeah. No, all that makes sense. If I can kind of summarize what you just said, from what I heard, really the thing that people should be doing, if it's considered work, is just what they think about all the time. If it's on your mind all the time because you're doing it, you're losing track of it, and then when you're not doing it, you're thinking about it, and then you also realize that it gives you energy, then that's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
It's whatever is just obsessing. It's just what you obsess about.
Yep.
I mean, just because I know you, that seems like it works, but there are probably a lot of people who, what if they don't have anything like that? Like there was probably a reason why you obsessed about that thing. And I think what people are interested in learning is like, how did you get that spark? How do you get something on your mind or some thing to do so that you can obsess about it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the baseline answer for that is collect as many experiences as possible.
Yeah, just knock on like every single door.
Try everything.
You can find, dip your feet in everything.
Try everything, yeah. A lot of that is your parents too. Like not all parents have to pay for classes or send you to like basketball camp or whatever. Like just taking you out to different experiences, that is what will shape your interests. But you got to get out and do things. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And it is a lot of your parents growing up, but once you go to college, that's on you.
Yeah, you're on your own.
And I couldn't agree more that one of the best things you can do early in college, especially the first 2 years, is just explore as much as possible.
Yeah.
Do everything, join as many clubs as you want, go to every single event, no matter how you feel about it. Just go, talk to as many people as you can, try to make some friends in different circles too.
Yeah.
If possible. And that way you will eventually open a door that smells good. The water feels nice in there and you'll want to keep obsessing about it, right?
Yeah. Were there moments in college that you thought were really worth it? And were there moments where you thought were not worth it that you could have done without?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We can keep talking about trying experiences. I think one of the experiences that was most worth it for me, which I did really randomly, and I think I might have talked about this in a video too, but it's because there was this girl in my dorm who I will keep anonymous, but she was going out to this social event, and usually at the time I was in a relationship for all of college. In my first 2 years, I was long distance, so that forced. I don't know if it didn't force me to do anything, but I was a bit insecure in my relationship, and because my ex-girlfriend at the time felt uncomfortable with me going out and doing a lot of things. A lot of the nights in my first year, I didn't go out and do much just because I didn't want to make someone else feel anxious, which now I honestly kind of regret because I didn't get to do as much as I was going to do. But for whatever reason, this one night I went out to this party with this girl and I met a very, very interesting guy. He had probably the most obscure beliefs that I have ever known about anybody. Is just for context, he was like a diehard communist. Like he really like believed in socialism, communism, but he was a really great guy, nice guy. He just really liked that area of politics, and he always wore like a communist like jacket everywhere he went. And I was just like, this guy is trippy because like he's I wouldn't say was our school liberal. I don't know. What would you describe it as? I don't know if it was described as liberal, but he was safe to say he was the only person around campus who would wear something that outlandish, and just be completely unfazed by it. And a lot of people were very turned off by him just because of like the way he presented himself and like what his beliefs were like so openly about. But I saw him and I was more curious than anything. I was like, wow, like this guy is just like so shamelessly like down for whatever vibe he's about. Like I respect that in a way. He was like still nice. Like he didn't like hurt anybody. He wasn't like trying to mess with anyone. But so I got to be friends with him and I got to know him a bit better. And it turns out that he was also the president of the radio station at UC Irvine.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, because I was talking and I was like, where are you getting all these ideas from? And like I was like, you have so much to say about this. I'm like, how did like what like why do you know so much? He's like, oh, I have a couple talk shows that I do twice a week, and during those talk shows I just get to talk about whatever I want, and so I get to explore this and talk about it more. And I was like, you have a talk show? He's like, yeah. And I was like, how? He's like, oh, because every college has like a radio station. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so he told me about like the next time that they were recruiting DJ hosts for their radio station. So I went just for fun, and then I ended up really liking it. Yeah. And I had a talk show for the last few years of college. It was really fun. I just got to play music that I liked, underground music. I had my friends come in whenever we just got to talk. Like you just get to go. It was like a really, really like small bunker. You remember?
Yeah.
I took you.
Yeah, you took me and John.
You guys came and we talked in there. Yeah, is this like
a EDM on there?
A little bunker like out by the side of school. Inside of it,
that
it's
was
just
really
like,
fun.
It's just full of vinyl and like CDs, and I just got
sick.
to like nerd out in there and like just listen to music and just talk. I was just like, and that never would have happened unless I met my friend.
Unless you went out.
Because I went out and I was like, and that like probably that was a huge spark for me. Because I was like, wow, I just get to explore something that I really like, which because I've always been into music, and I was like, this is just another opportunity for me to find more music, to be a DJ, and to also just get to like talk and have a show. I'm like, this is so cool. That was super worth it for me in college. And although I'm not like a DJ host anymore, but like that experience is so memorable to me. And it all came from just trying something that I'm just going somewhere that I wouldn't normally have gone. It was just like such a transformative experience. I met so many people through that. I met a lot of people. I learned a lot of music. I even like one time I even like got the balls to ask one of my teachers, my professors, to come into the station with me. And they talked. It was one of these guys. He was kind of trippy too, but did you take this class? You might have taken this class too, actually. It was a class on integrative medicine. He was like this old Chinese guy. Yeah.
I remember that guy.
He did like his whole research lab was about
like Tai Chi
the benefits of Tai Chi
or something.
And he talked about Qigong and Gua Sha. And so I was like, hey, do you want to come talk about integrative medicine with me? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he actually came out and we talked a little bit about it. Yeah.
Nice.
Because I was really, I don't remember, I was really into yoga back then too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
I
remember
was
that.
I was an assistant yoga teacher at a
Mhm.
studio, and I was like, I want to talk to him just about like benefits and stuff.
Yeah.
It was really fun. I was just like, I never would have even done that.
Mhm.
Like I never would have asked a faculty member, because
Mhm.
back in college, also this is like a point of interest for a lot of students. Like you're so scared to talk to faculty. Some people are really scared to talk to
Mhm.
faculty members.
Yeah.
Like they feel like there's such a divide, and like this is like such an authoritative figure,
Mhm.
and like you're just like a student. Like what do I say to them? How do I email them? Like
Yeah.
am I supposed to be professional? Do I like bring a gift? Or like I don't know. Like but then you realize that these are just people.
Yeah.
Like faculty members are just people, and they have interests too. And it's just like we just happen to have some kind of alignment and interest. Like I like yoga.
Mhm.
I knew he was in integrative medicine. I was just like, I can just talk to him like a person. And
Mhm.
it really like that experience also in itself like really lowered the threshold for me about like, oh wait, like being an adult is just there's no difference in an adult versus like a college. Like you're just people,
Mhm.
and you just have interests, and you can just communicate like normal. So anyway, that was another formative experience too.
No, I agree with you there. Like, it's all about the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I would say, like, I would say, like, the experiences that you get from all the different people that you meet in college is so worth it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in my first year, I remember talking to a lot of upperclassmen, asking like, "Hey, I'm trying to get into med school. Like, should I take, physiology and anatomy and
Mm-hmm.
whatever med school classes during like summer?"
Mm-hmm.
Like just being like really cringy, try hard
Yeah, yeah.
pre-med.
Just trying to get through and
Yeah, so bad. But like, so
trying to glow on the application.
yeah, and they're like, "Dude, no, like this
Just have
is
fun.
college."
Just go have fun.
Yeah, like these are the best years of your life. Like,
Yeah.
do what you want to do because you're going to have plenty of medical school classes when you go to med school.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, "Huh, okay. What is the opposite I can do then?"
Just
Because
do
I
bare
I
minimum.
wanted to maximize.
Mm.
I don't know why I was this maximizer. So I was like, "Yeah, why don't I just try to knock out my requirements as soon as possible?"
You can just cruise.
So what I did was I did that study abroad program.
Mm.
I went and lived in the UK for the entire summer, knocked out all of physics,
Mm-hmm.
but then also got to travel around.
Right.
Like that was, I don't know why that program was like known to be like a really fun, like cultural experience because you get to like travel all over Europe while you're taking physics.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
No, that's
I
like-
like screw med classes. I'm gonna do this instead.
That's awesome.
But yeah, there was a lot of, I was like trying to maximize on experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like I joined a lot of clubs. I became an RA. I joined a Greek fraternity. I don't know why. Like I don't regret it, but thinking about it, it's just so cringe. Like I don't know why I did that, but
Nothing wrong with that. I kind of regret not doing one.
it was really fun for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just college days are just cringe thinking about some of the things we did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I tried to get myself out of my comfort zone as much as possible. But one thing that I wanted to make sure I did was I wanted to have multiple different friend groups.
Mm.
So like when I was with the honors kids, I was with the honors kids doing their thing. When I was with my fraternity bros or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
when I was with my RA fam, we always had like these different family groups.
Yeah.
So that I could always have different experiences. Sometimes it would overlap, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I was all about experiences.
Yeah.
Like it was always about asking the older classmen like what to do, and I would always take their advice and try to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. No, that's good advice too, is to have multiple friend groups so you have multiple perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And like you get to feel the vibe of different communities
yeah,
and really integrate in.
yeah. And another thing I'll add is that I did live in the frat house for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was an RA for another year, and then I did live in the honors house,
Mm-hmm.
and all three living situations were completely different vibes.
Right.
But that is something that if you can, like I know money is an issue sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can, like the living experience itself is such
Valuable.
It's invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
You
Being
can't,
independent,
yeah, like
being on your own.
some people like at our school specifically, there are a lot of people who like to commute
Yeah.
and live at home.
Mm-hmm. I did that for the last year actually, just to save money
Mhm.
because I didn't need to.
Yeah. But
To-
I
to
mean,
live
if you can afford it,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, that living situation with other people that's where you meet like
Mm-hmm.
your friends for life.
Totally agree. Yeah, I remember I visited you when you were at your frat house actually once. I remember
You did?
I biked there. I remember I biked to Irvine and
You biked or I don't remember this.
Yeah, I remember. I went here and I played ping pong with someone in the.
Oh yeah, we had a ping pong table
I forget who
downstairs.
it was. I forget who it was. I played ping pong with one of your bros, and I was like in high school. I was like, what the heck? It's kind of funny, but no, yeah, I definitely agree. That grows you up faster than anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the best part about it. Is just that you just realize that all the things, all the luxuries that you had at home,
Mm-hmm.
are no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
And the only person who's gonna do them is you. Because if you don't, then it's just gonna be dirty.
Yeah.
You don't clean up, it's just gonna be trash, and no one's gonna take it out. And it's like, oh crap! I guess I do have to take it out. Guess I do have to wipe my desk down.
Yeah. Oh man, like being an RA grew me up real fast.
Yeah,
Because not only were we responsible for yourself, I had
the
to
whole
like,
hall.
yeah, I had to watch over the hall and like
I should have
organize
that
community
too.
events.
I remember we had to clean your hall after they all left, and Dad had to wash down that fridge.
Oh my god.
That was bad.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, I
Actually.
remember that. Everything just went to Salvation Army that
Yep.
day. Let's say back then when you were in college,
Mhm.
what would quitting school have meant to you, or like meant to our family if you were to drop out of college and pursued this?
In college,
Yeah, back then.
it really would have depended on what was the plan.
Yeah.
That's really what it would come down to.
Mm-hmm.
I think most parents or most people are just concerned about uncertainty. They're very afraid of uncertainty, and the only advice that people give you, that anyone can give you, is advice based on their own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start to do something that goes off the traditional path,
Mm-hmm.
and people are afraid of what they don't know, then they're going to be very concerned, especially your parents, especially our parents. They would be very concerned. So unless you had a really good plan,
Yeah.
then it would have been terrible. It would have been impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think back to it now, in my headspace, in my mindset back then, I would have had no plan. So it would have been a terrible option, which is why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So it would have been disastrous, if you ask me now, back then if I quit. Because I had no plan.
Yeah. Quitting was never even on my mind.
There's just too much uncertainty even myself about what I had to do.
No uncertainty, plus like how are you gonna pay back the loans?
Mm-hmm.
Plus like we're so ingrained in the pre-med track. It's like
Yeah.
we need that college diploma for the next step. Like
Yeah.
quitting was just not an option.
Right.
That's kind of scary to think about. It was like there was no option.
There was no option.
But I'm thinking back to when I was a
Well, it felt like there was no option.
yeah, it felt like there was no option.
But there is always an option. Now that we're on
Thinking
the other side
back,
of it, yeah, there's so many options. But when you're in that, when you're so in it, it just feels like there's no option.
Yeah. When I was in my 4th year of college, one of my best friends, he basically dropped out of college. It was like the first time I ever experienced this, like in my personal circle. So what he did was he read this book on stock trading, and he just fell in love with it. He was like, "This is my passion. Like this is me." So I forget the exact details, but he somehow got in contact with the author. And then he basically sold himself to the author. Like he wrote up something, and the author was like super impressed. He was like, "Yeah, come out here and work for me." And so he's like, "Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move to New York and do stock trading and drop out of college."
Yeah.
And I was
Wow.
like, "Dude, you need like one more semester to get the diploma." I don't think he even ever went back to finish to get the diploma. And he's easily like he became a millionaire like in his mid-20s or something. So
That's amazing. Yeah.
there's options. It's
There's
just
always
if you
options.
like have a plan, that was his plan. Like he's gutsy to like even step out of his comfort zone to like look for a job like far away.
Right.
But he went for it.
Well, he just had so much certainty about what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And that's a really rare thing to come across. And I think that's what everyone is always looking for.
Yeah. I mean, lesson learned from that is to read a lot too.
Expose yourself to things, read a lot, and just dive deep into.
Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of this other person. It's not a friend of mine, and I'm hating myself because I don't remember their name. But there is, you might actually know, but there was like this story. It's actually a very similar story, but there's a story about this lawyer, or soon-to-be lawyer, and he or she was like 1 semester or whatever away from graduating and getting a law degree. but they dropped out and became a comedian. And they actually made it pretty big. But that was like all over the news for a while. I wish I remember their name. I can look it up later or something. But that was a whole story too. It's just like a whole not ethical thing, but like a whole thing. It's like, why would you just not write it out and get your law degree? And then you could be a lawyer and a comedian. But then in the interview, it was just like, no, like I knew that I was never going to use it. And I just wanted to be a comedian. And I dropped out, and they just had that certainty that their life was headed in a different direction. And it was just up until about a year ago, I've always thought that was the dumbest decision that they could have made. But now that I think about it, it's just like, if you have that much certainty, then honestly, like, it doesn't matter.
It's content too.
It's controversial.
Yeah,
it's controversial for
content.
Sure, and it's gonna get
Unique
more
narrative.
attention. Sure, but no, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong if you know you're not going to use it. There's nothing wrong with just accepting that the experience that you gained from anything you've learned up until that point can't be used in your favor in the future.
Yeah.
Like those experiences, you didn't lose them. You didn't lose anything that you've learned up until that point. But you do have a lot of fuel for whatever you're doing next.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter what happens on this creator journey, like everything that we've learned through becoming a doctor, that's going to stick with us. It's just how are we going to use it going forward? I mean, final thoughts. We went over a lot. I had all these points written out too. Like that's just planning ahead, but we didn't even cover it.
Yeah, just got
So,
distracted.
I mean, that is just reflective of what our life was. You can have plans.
But they'll change.
Yeah, but they'll change.
Yeah. Well, they will change, but there also needs to be some critical self-reflection. So what would really help us on this first episode is for anyone watching, if you're not already, head over and join our Discord community. We love feedback. So we also want to hear how we can structure these to make them more enjoyable, to get more value out of them. Do you want us to go on tangents more? Do you want us to go on less tangents? What topics should we cover? We have a lot of topics obviously up our sleeve, but we want to hear from you guys. So leave comments too. Anything is useful. Anything will be taken into consideration.